I'm watching this documentary. This is my channel. Um, it's about Nazis in America, or Nazis. These people are not Nazis. The Nazis died out, and the last remnants of them in like 47. The werewolves. Um, so it's Louis Theroux from the BBC going around California, Southern California, and interviewing skinheads and self-identified Nazis and Tom Metzger. I didn't know I had any respect for Tom Metzger, but it went out the window completely with watching this Louis Theroux, and I think it's called Louis and the Nazis. It almost sounds like a skinhead band, Louis and the Nazis. But I had seen an investigative reports about um, Tom Metzger and White Aryan Resistance, and about I know his name. I can't think of the guy's name. Three dudes in Seattle beat to death an Ethiopian, and the Southern Poverty Law Center sued Metzger because he was putting out racist propaganda, which I think that's kind of crap, but whatever, it's like, suing J.D. Salinger or putting him in prison for shooting John Lennon, that yikes. Is that the guy that he read Catcher in the Rye and then I don't know, maybe it was the one who shot Reagan. No, I think Reagan was a freaking cult member of Manson's. Whatever. Yeah, but in this it's just ridiculous, and I was just watching it, and then what pissed me off is them going to Mexico. These white Nazis going to Mexico and then using the women, people who are Americans. White Nazis going down there, and then that just sickened me. I don't know if that's kind of maybe that's my racial identity movement showing or something. Might be more defensive because a few different things, and people ask me, I've gotten a lot of weird responses when I tell people what the hell, what the background is. Some people actually feel betrayed. Most people don't care. And then most people just say, "Oh, you either look this or that, or that. Oh, you're obviously Latino. You're obviously Arab. You're obviously Irish." It depends on what I say first, which one I talk about first, and they connect. And but or if I'm speaking Spanish first, and then they're just like, "Oh," but the point I want to talk about in this is because I was watching, I'm like, I gotta say something about this Nazi crap. Louis Theroux actually asked, not Metzger, but this younger guy, he's mid 30s or something, and his brother was there. He's probably the same age, and you know. He's in their garage, and he asked them, well, if I were to say I was Jewish, would you have a problem with that? And then they said, well, he said, yeah, I'd throw you, you know, he said, I'd beat the crap out of you and throw you into the street. Um, and then he asks you, are you Jewish? And the guy, and Louis says, um, you know what, I'd like not to answer that. And it keeps coming back. Well, and then they start getting very hostile and towards him because it keeps coming back up. Well, I can tell look at your nose, look at this, you're a Jew, you know. I hate questions like this because if you ask somebody, were you molested as a child? And they say, that's way too personal of a question for somebody to come out of the street and ask me that. Well, you didn't say no. You didn't say, oh my God, of course not. I mean, there's questions like that. Like, are you this? Are you that? And it's not just, are you a Jew? It could even be, if I'm arguing politics or something like that, is people actually ask people, do you believe in a God, or are you a Christian, or this and that? I think asking somebody's an atheist is less, because there's no cohesion or at least there shouldn't be. Apparently, with Atheist Plus, now there's going to be. But atheism isn't a defining character. It's just, are you a non-Buddhist? Yes. You know, but these these things that are positive, not to say that being molested or being raped or being, or whatever horrible thing, did your parents beat you when you were a child, or like these very intimate questions that you can't just say to somebody, that's way too personal for you to ask me that. Are you a Jew? Yeah, I prefer not to answer. And then people, they just, well, it's kind of bullshit. Where do you live? I don't know you, that's way too personal. I've said that to people a couple of occasions. I just thought that, and then they got really hostile. I actually wondered, I was like, I want to see what it was. No, he's not. And the stupid thing is with another point, the stupid thing is with this, what are they, white? They keep saying white and Aryan. Okay. If you say Aryan, you have to go all the way to southern India. As far south as southern India and as far west as Bangladesh. At least. That stretching all the way up into Ireland. And then the people who have Aryan traits, Aryan blood, are, I don't want to say black Americans, but Americans who have been here since, Americans who've been through slavery and have been in this country for about 400 years, because Even though it was slave ownership and all, there was still race mixing. Thomas Jefferson had children uh, by a black woman. You have, I mean, basically almost every self-identifying Mexican, because the Mayans won't identify themselves as Mexicans, and they don't like the Mexican government either. So I'm a bit skeptical on the whole Zapatista movement, because it began the day NAFTA began, and it seemed like, all right, okay, now that's a reason for them to go in, because Mexico wants basically the indigenous people's land to go in and drill the oil that's there. Because the indigenous people, some of them still have rights. So you have mestizos, which is most Latinos. They're what's called Latin American, basically. I recognize that, yes, Italy, Portugal, and Spain are Latino. Yes, I realize that. But the mixing that went on that made, if you self-identify as Latino, you're not saying, oh well, I'm from Poland originally, but I was brought up in Paraguay, or I'm from Uganda, but I was brought up in Colombia. Not just a cultural thing, but it's actually your ethnicity. It's actually your racial lines. This is your heritage, everything. You are intrinsically, you're Aryan in the characteristics and all the cultural traits. Mexico is very Catholic. It's most of the Latin American countries, heavily Catholic, speak Spanish or Portuguese. Their customs, their cooking style, it's all, for the vast majority of everything. We know bits, only through archaeology do we really know about the Aztecs. It's not, all that oral tradition stuff was cut. There's remnants of it here and there, but the same could be said for Druids or Vikings, or and with the Vikings, some of their stuff got preserved more, because when they became Christianized, they kind of rearranged their text. Beowulf was originally a pagan text, and it was God. It was and you can see the pagan overlays, or it was at least coming from a newly Christianized pagan society. If you're a Nazi, the way Hitler used Aryan was Nordic, which I would debate are one of the peoples of Europe that might not be Aryan. The Celts, the Latins, the Greeks, the Arabs. Well, Arab is a loose term. The Syrians, the Palestinians, the Libyans, the Egyptians, Mesopotamia, crossed the Hindu Kush into India. But Hitler didn't consider the Slavs to be Aryans. He considered them to be a slave class of people, where we get the word slave, Slav. They were a mongrel people. They were inferior. He was wiping out the Poles. Why he wanted Poland is because there was a lot of Germans in Poland, just like Czechoslovakia, the Sudetenland. Austria is a German country. Now, it's not part of Germany, but they're German people. Or Austrians. Okay, yes, but you're Germanic, right? I mean, not even Germany's called Germany. It's Deutschland. Um, the I mean, there's Germans. If you were talking Nordic people, it would be Germans, Scandinavians, um, Finland, Norway, Sweden, Denmark. The Anglo-Saxons, obviously, they'd have to be grouped in as Nordic. Um, but not necessarily the Irish, or at least not the Celtic Irish. Not the Celts that remain in Britain. I guess they would be, and they were treated as a lower class. Um, the French, you could say, yeah, because they're Franks. Spain, no. I mean, you could say Visigoths, but the Visigoths didn't. It wasn't the huge there was no the huge displacement. Yeah, you got some characteristics of blue eyes and blonde hair and stuff into the Iberian Peninsula. In Italy, you have the same thing with the Lombards and the Visigoths going there, but the Visigoths really weren't raping. It was more the Lombards. But the Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese, that's a very weak link. That would be the same link as the, like, is saying, well, there's black people who have green eyes, so there. I mean, it's very, it wouldn't include all these things. And the skinheads, if they saw Syrian or Lebanese, not all, I mean, you could pick out dark, I mean, Lebanese or dark Syrians or, whatever. I mean, people naturally, I mean, you could look at, I'm not going to show a picture of my family portrait, but if you saw all the people in my family, you'd think, who intermarried who there? Just like, I mean, this is something that, I mean, it really struck me when there was a Brazilian family. I already talked about that before, though. Where same parents, you had basically different races of kids. Because down there, that's what it's intermixed. And even in modern day, you can have two parents of the same, I mean, going back for generations, and their kid has their blah blah blah, and their kid has blonde hair, or they're something else, and their kid has freckles, or their kid is darker skin, or this, or I mean, because the genes are so, you still have all those varied traits. It's like it's kind of like spinning a bunch of roulette wheels, They're all kind of tilted, but still, things can happen. But if they were to see even an Assyrian or Syrian, what about Armenia? The Armenians, Russians, Siberians. I mean, most of Russia's not even in Europe. Greeks, Italians, Sardinians, Sicilians, Libyans. This European or white or Nordic. Well, what if And then the skinhead, I forget his name, but he had a Polish last name. Which why the only thing about the Nazis or anything that I think is nice or interesting, and I know it's very funny that there's something nice about the Nazis because they're evil and needed to be crushed, is the swastika, and I think it's disgusting that it's used like that. That's a symbol of hate. I think that you can't have about 6,000 years of beautiful tradition, and then some jackass comes along and screws it up. The Baha'i Temple in Chicago has swastikas on it. It has Stars of David, it has crosses, it has crescent moons. It has, I feel like I'm going through a list of lucky charms. It has the Hindu Om. It has the Buddha, the Dharma wheel. Swastikas were used by, ancient Europeans, and even till modern times, swastika was used, and it was used all across the Aryan peoples from India to Ireland, predominantly, but it shows up in, I believe it showed up in Native American culture. It got to China by way of Buddhism, the Aryans going that way. And I hope by this point, if you think that when I say Aryan, I'm talking about someone with blonde hair, blue eyes, and the sloped nose, the skinny, regular, not like my nose, like the Nordic white boy. I don't know how to describe it. You know what I mean. I think that sucks that they took a symbol that's ancient and very. It's cool looking. I mean, if you see swastikas not in the context of, on a Buddha or in a mandala or the ancient artifacts of Europe, they look cool. It's like, oh, that's beautiful. Or the interlocking patterns. You see these cool geometry. And you had the jackass Nazis mess it up. I think it would be awesome to take the power out of that symbol, or put positive power back into it and start creating not just the solid black, but actually doing a lot of colors, and you do it many lines and everything, and not have it be a Nazi symbol. There's shops where you can go in and there's the statue of the Buddha and he has a swastika on his head. Because the Nazis did not invent that. I think that's one of the things that pisses me off about them. The other thing is the inconsistency. The guy who actually killed, I forget his name, the Ethiopian guy. I'm going to remember it. I'm going to remember it once I stop making this video. I think it was part of the Hammerskins. No, it wasn't the Hammerskins. But the guy had a Polish last name. He would have been in a slave camp if he was if the Nazis caught him. Like, these people who are, oh, I'm a Nazi, this and that. And then they have, of all things, the Celtic cross. There's nothing about that makes sense. You could say some of the Celtic artwork is similar to the Germanic artwork and the weaves and knots, but if you actually know the difference between the different types of weaves and knots, then you'd know, okay, that's obviously different, but there's a similarity there. But then again, the Germanic people were coming, they weren't even originally, it's debatable whether they were even from Europe. They were coming into Celtic territory. Like, the Aryans, the whites, I'd like to go, I wonder if I could find like an Aryan, like one of these Nazi skinhead meetings and just go there, be like, yeah, I'm Tom, and see if I could. I mean, I don't know if I could. Well, I guess I wouldn't be wearing this stuff. Well, no, I would be wearing it. I'm not gonna. I wouldn't take it off to get. Well, if I'm going there to observe, but I'd love to ask these people. You know, not as confrontational, because I really, if I go ask some skinhead or Nazi on here, they're gonna get all up in arms. But someone just in regular conversation just asked, like, but Hitler massacred, you know, like it wasn't. It's just the Jews and the how how many black people did Hitler kill? I mean, wasn't he concerned about reclaiming German territory? I mean, he went crazy because he had syphilis in the brain. He thought he was going to conquer America and the world, and they were going to divide the world between Germany and Japan. But it was originally recollecting all the Germanic lands or Nordic lands. Because Germany always had kind of an identity crisis. Italy, you could kind of say the same thing for, but it's a peninsula surrounded by mountains. So even though it's broken up, and you have Florence, Venice, you had the city-states, the Papal States, the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies. They all had a common language, they had common geography. Uh, you know, uh, there was a barrier to the outside, kind of like India with the Hindu Kush Mountains, or just the entire Himalayas. Just put it that way. But there was no, I mean, you had the Austro-Hungarian Empire, you had Germany, and then you had this fractioning, and then Hitler had his dreams of reclaiming that. And then, the French, because the Franks, okay. And then, obviously, our brother into the north, the Viking people, which they came from, Then of course, they wanted England, because the Anglo-Saxons. But it's just silly. Polish and a Russian skinhead, a Russian Nazi, a Polish Nazi. If Mussolini and Franco weren't fascists, he might have started exterminating. Please tell me the difference. I mean, if you. I think the skinheads, most Italian, have they seen like actual Italian people who are 100% Italian? I'm not talking as a anomalous person of like, they were 400 years ago, they came from Germany into northern Italy, no, like an Italian, real Italian person. They're nothing Nordic. And it's completely indigenous. It was actually the Germanic people that spread and actually wreaked havoc. And when the Greeks and the Latins, the Romans, basically, the Iberian Peninsula and Italy, and all of North Africa under Rome, and all the way into India, had these great, beautiful carving temples and beautiful works of art and sculpture. The Germanic people were living in mud huts and eating dog. So, Sieg Heil to that. I think Sieg Heil means hail victory or something like that. So, we got that on you. Pure Aryan, pure Nordic. You were, I mean, what's we were Vikings. Oh, so you were going through villages, raping and killing and plundering, actually like thuggish psychopathic gangs, which they always bring up, and they have the caricatures of the Mexicans and the blacks, which is like, if you want to take the worst caricature of that, right? It's exactly what the Vikings were like. And that's what they did. They just, I mean, if we're going to blame any group of, if you want to blame a race for the Dark Ages, the Germans, look at, they weren't Latins, they weren't Celts, they weren't Visigoths, Germanic, Vandals, Germanic, the Franks, Germanic, the Lombards, Germanic, the Saxons, Germanic, the Angles, Germanic, the Jutes, Germanic, the Huns, Germanic, because originally that's where these people came from. It's speculated that blonde hair and blue eyes actually arose in Mongolia, and then eventually thrived in, I mean, there's huge, vast migrations of people that in history people don't think about, like, this is our motherland. Well, not really. It came from somewhere else. I mean, there's even a huge bulk of African people who have been there for about 3,000 years that originally came from Papua New Guinea. I mean, if you look at look at the migration into America, to the New World. It's just lunacy. Like, it's one thing. I mean, I can get where they're coming from of there being a race war, and there's realities, but these people aren't living in. These people are being white trash for the sake of being white. You can not have money and not be white trash. Not be the scum of the earth, sit around, drink beer all day. Blasting loud music. Having like 5 kids out of wedlock, and tattoos all up and down your arms, covered like a carnival, looking like a carny. And you see some of these people, and they're living in like middle-class houses, or this, or and then going down to Mexico, I guess this is unchristian. I mean, I guess we'll always hate Nazis, because if they ever find out, if I might pass for a little bit, but if they find out, they'd kill me, because I'm the worst thing in the world to them. I'm mongrel blood. I'm mixed. I'm already tainted. I am an abomination. Which they won't even say that about black people. They say, well, they go back to Africa and live there and be free and be happy, but don't bother us. This is our land. Yeah, I know. I already get it. I know. Living in a country where half the names are French, or a third of the names are French of the states. A third of the names are, well, Illinois is a French spelling. Colorado means red or painted. Nevada means snowfall. I mean, Florida means flower land. And the nations that were already here, like the Potawatomi, the Iroquois, the Huron, the Apache, Navajo. But yeah, and that was another thing. One time I was sitting down eating somewhere, and I slipped up and I said, "Yeah, I'm Argentinian, and I got Argentinian, Colombian ancestry, mainly Argentinian, but you know, from South America, so I have some Syrian, but I'm also Irish too. And the next day they said, you can't sit with the whites anymore. You have to sit with us. That kind of sucked and caused a lot of tension. I wasn't around there a lot. It was like, this not a place I want to be, so screw that. But there are tensions like that out there. There are. I don't like people who deny the race. There is racial tension, like that Gaio Biota idiot or whatever the hell he's talking about. But also people who actively engage in it, but what the hell? Like, man, there's hatred there, but you know, they are ignorant of a lot. But it's very strange though. There's some people who are self-identified Nazis that are actually very nice people, wouldn't hurt, well, they would hurt people, but they wouldn't just attack someone out of nowhere for nothing. They're self-identified racists, which that's fine if you're a racist, but you don't treat people, if that doesn't go into your actions negatively or violently, then fine. I don't care. Then I would never know you were a racist. Even if somebody told me they were racist, but then acted equally to people, and I don't want to say equally to people, because obviously if somebody's a jerk to you, you're gonna be like, shut the hell up or something like that. But judge people on their character, then that kind of breaks down the whole racist thing, doesn't it? I've actually met people like this, so I can say they're racist, but they're not a bigot. It's kind of funny when you think about it, but yeah, I don't know. I guess this is my response to the video. It's what the fuck. It's 38 minutes long. I'm just utterly confused, and I'm pissed off, kind of, because they've taken the swastika, which is a cool image. They don't know what the hell. I mean, J.R.R. Tolkien was asked, because the Nazis really like, because Middle Earth, that's a Nordic, that's from the Vikings, and there's a lot of stuff that's it's almost straight out of Beowulf. I mean, he's translated Beowulf into modern English. They asked J.R.R. Tolkien, so how do you identify as being an Aryan? Like, ask him about being Aryan. So since you're Aryan, and he stopped and he said, I'm not Hindustani, which is what it was called. It was Hindustan. Before it was India. Hindustani, India, Pakistan, and East Pakistan, which then became Bangladesh. But yeah, it's a correct understanding of Aryan, because the Aryans broke two ways. They go back to Persia. I mean, there's people in Hungary today that have almond eyes because of the Huns. There's Germanic people who aren't Hun that have almond eyes. Don't even ask me where I got this from. There's actually a famous, or I don't know if they're famous or whatever. Um, there's a porn star who goes under an Asian name and does these Asian films or whatever. But she's actually Hungarian or Czechoslovakian. Because people look at her and think she's Chinese or something. Oh, this is actually it was from the is it from the National Geographic study or the? Actually, I couldn't even tell you what. Whatever. Yeah, it was just really weird. I mean, I don't find Japanese women attractive, or the Asian. You know, what gets? I mean, I realize Asia's China, Korea, Japan. I don't find those people attractive. There might be, I might wind up marrying a Japanese woman in the future. Might find one beautiful, but generally not attractive. I get called racist for that. No, I don't think that's racist. I don't find people who are albino to be attractive. I mean, there's characteristics in people which you wouldn't find attractive, you know? Um, but yeah, it's, I don't know, the Nazis. They just really, what the hell? Like, it seems to be growing too, but, well, at least in California. And, freaking Nazis. Oh, and another thing. I am for the right to march, and I think it's hypocritical. Though they held up like some parade or something, and the JDL came out to protest. I thought that's the most hypocritical thing. And they're screaming anti-Semites. Most Jews aren't Semites, and Israel is ethnically cleansing Semitic people from their homeland, from their indigenous land. And the Jews claim the right of return because of their religion. Well, Christianity could do the same thing. Indonesians could do the same thing and conquer Saudi Arabia. Well, this is where religion came from. Not to mention that there were Jews living there. There were Samaritans living there. There was a huge Christian population there. There was Muslims there. There didn't need to be it's occupied Palestine. The JDL is a terrorist organization that has murdered innocent people. And I mean, a Los Angeles Arab shop owner gone up and blown their brains out, not knowing their politics, not knowing who they were, just because they were Arab, blowing their brains out. Members of the JDL did that, which Marikana started because of the Intifada, because the Arabs got pissed at the Israelis and started rioting. The uprising, resisting of the expansionism of the Jews. The Zionists. I'm not saying all Jews. I know Jews that are anti-Zionist. But I think it's totally hypocritical of them. I think let them march. It's America. And it's totally hypocritical for the JDL, which I think they're more dangerous than these skinhead idiots. Yes, I realize. Personally, well, I don't know. I mean, they've walked into, because the JDL, and then you had the cock, when they were in Israel they were called the cock party, Maracana. The thing that sprung suicide bombers was an Israeli man walking into, I believe it is the Mosque of Abraham, the Tomb of Abraham, and machine gunning down men, women, and children. I think he killed like 147 of them or something. Because they were, I mean, this is taking the command of Yahweh to Joshua and saying it applies to modern times, even though all of Judaism said God had expelled them by way of Rome, that they were expelled from the land, not allowed to return until the Messiah. There were people damned to wander the earth. And then when fascism rose up, Zionism came in too. Funny. Or I should say that hyper-nationalism, and then the rise of the nation-state, hyper-nationalism, and then falling into fascism. Same time you had the group like the Young Turks and stuff like this. So when you had the Zionists. Basically pre-World War I, all this stuff culminating. So that's my rambling, weird 46 minutes, is it 47 minutes? Alright, peace to you, may God save Serbia and Syria. Please pray for those who are grievously ill, dying, or dead, and the relatives or loved ones of those people who are extremely ill or passed away. And for all those persecuted across the world. Peace to you, may God save Serbia and Syria. I'm watching this documentary. This is just my channel. It's about Nazis in America. Or Nazis. These people are not Nazis. The Nazis died out, and the last remnants of them in like 47. The werewolves. So it's Louis Theroux from the BBC going around California, Southern California, and interviewing skinheads and self-identified Nazis and Tom Metzger. I didn't know I had any respect for Tom Metzger, but it went out the window completely with watching this Louis Theroux, and I think it's called Louis and the Nazis. It almost sounds like a skinhead band, Louis and the Nazis. But I had seen an investigative reports about Tom Metzger and White Aryan Resistance, and about I know his name. I can't think of the guy's name. Three dudes in Seattle beat to death an Ethiopian, and the Southern Poverty Law Center sued Metzger because he was putting out racist propaganda, which I think that's kind of crap, but whatever, it's like, suing J.D. Salinger or putting him in prison for shooting John Lennon, yikes. Is that the guy that he read Catcher in the Rye and then, I don't know, maybe it was the one who shot Reagan. No, I think Reagan was a freaking cult member of Manson's. Whatever. Yeah, but in this it's just ridiculous, and I was just watching it, and then what pissed me off is them going to Mexico. These white Nazis going to Mexico and then using the women. Because I was watching, I'm like, I gotta say something about this Nazi crap. Louis Theroux actually asked, not Metzger, but this younger guy, he's mid 30s or something, and his brother was there. He's probably the same age, and you know, uh, he's in their garage, and he asked them, well, if I were to say I was Jewish, would you have a problem with that? And then they said, well, he said, yeah, I'd throw you, you know, he said, I'd beat the crap out of you and throw you into the street. And then he asks you, are you Jewish? And and Louis says, um, you know what, I'd like not to answer that. And it keeps coming back. Well, and then they start getting very hostile and towards him because it keeps coming back up. Well, I can tell look at your nose, look at this, you're a Jew, you know. I hate questions like this because if you ask somebody, were you molested as a child? And they say, that's way too personal of a question for somebody to come out of the street and ask me that. Well, you didn't say no. You didn't say, oh my God, of course not. I mean, there's questions like that. Like, are you this? Are you that? And it's not just, are you a Jew? It could even be, if I'm arguing politics or something like that, is people actually ask people, do you believe in a God, or are you a Christian, or this and that? I think asking somebody's an atheist is less, because there's no cohesion of or at least there shouldn't be. Apparently, with Atheist Plus, now there's going to be. But atheism isn't a defining character. It's just, are you a non-Buddhist? Yes. People who are Americans. White Nazis going down there, and then that just sickened me. I don't know if that's kind of maybe that's my racial identity movement showing or something. Might be more defensive because I'm a few different things, and people ask me, I've gotten a lot of weird responses when I tell people what the hell, what the background is. Some people actually feel betrayed. Most people don't care. And then most people just say, "Oh, you either look this or that, or that. Oh, you're obviously Latino. You're obviously Arab. You're obviously Irish." It depends on what I say first, which one I talk about first, and they connect. And but or if I'm speaking Spanish first, and then they're just like, "Oh," but the point I want to talk about in this is